You know, when we talk about modifying cars, our brains usually jump straight to performance. More horsepower, better handling, right? But what about all those mods that don't make you any faster? Today, we're going to dive into a side of car culture where logic takes a back seat and style, personality, and just pure fun are riding shotgun. Yeah, that's a question that really cuts to the core of a massive debate in the car community. Why on earth would you spend your hard-earned cash to make your car, at least on paper, worse? Well, as we're about to find out, the answer really depends on what you value more, raw numbers or just pure, unadulterated self-expression. So that brings us to our first big idea here, performance versus style. This really is the fundamental divide. And this lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you've got the logical, engineering-driven approach. Every single upgrade has to prove its worth. Does it make the car faster? Does it handle better? But then there's the other side of the coin, passion. And over there, the goal is totally different. It's about making something that's one of a kind, something that screams you. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. Let's look at some of these so-called pointless mods that we all secretly or not so secretly love. These are the case studies where style absolutely beats speed. All right, first up, cheap tires. And I know what you're thinking, that sounds completely backward, right? Your tires are what connect you to the road. They're critical, so why would anyone intentionally buy bad ones? Well, it's not for your daily commute, that's for sure. It's for something else entirely. And that something else is often drifting. For anyone who doesn't know, drifting is basically the art of controlled chaos. You're intentionally throwing the car sideways through a corner. And to do that, you need one key ingredient, a loss of traction. So think about it this way. The very thing that makes a tire terrible for a racetrack, that lack of grip, is exactly what makes it perfect for a burnout or a drift session. You get all that glorious smoke and spectacle without absolutely shredding your expensive, high-performance daily tires. It's practical in its own weird way. And I love this quote from our source material because it just nails the whole vibe. There's this total self-awareness. They know it looks pointless from the outside, but the experience, the excitement, the hype, well, that is the point. Next up, a classic cosmetic choice you see all over the place, blacking out your lights. This one is purely about achieving a certain aggressive look. The whole point here is to give the car that sleek, aggressive, kind of murdered out look by tinting the lights. It creates this really cool visual contrast. But, and this is a huge but, you have got to be careful. There's a massive safety warning here. You have to make sure your lights are still bright enough to be legal and, more importantly, safely visible to everybody else on the road. Okay, it's time. Let's talk about maybe the most controversial mod on our list, the big wing. Now, look, on a race car, spoilers and wings serve a real aerodynamic purpose. But on your average street car, well, that's where things get complicated. Now, to really get this debate, you have to know a key piece of slang from the car culture, racer. It's a pretty harsh term for mods that are all show and no-go. You know, parts that look fast but do absolutely nothing. And a giant wing on a slow car, that is the textbook example. But this is where that whole passion argument just comes roaring back. This quote absolutely nails it. Does a Subaru WRX need a wing that big for a trip to the grocery store? Of course not. But it's an iconic part of that car's identity. It looks cool. End of story. And the facts that a big wing can be super cool on one car, but totally cringy on another, well, that gets us into the fascinating, unwritten rules of car culture. The line between what's considered cool and what's considered rice isn't always logical. It's based on this shared, unspoken set of guidelines within the community. So here's a great example of one of those rules. A massive wing that came straight from the factory, totally cool. It's authentic. It's part of the car's DNA. But if you take that exact same wing and slap it on a base model car that never had one, suddenly you're in race territory. It's such a subtle distinction, but it's a crucial one in the community. And hey, this same kind of logic applies to stickers. I mean, we all joke about them adding 5 horsepower, but in reality, they're a form of personal expression. And just like with wings, the community has its own sense of what works and what really doesn't. Our source material had this brilliant analogy for it. Think of stickers like tattoos on a person. The idea is that these should mean something, right? They should be well placed and they should add to the overall look and story, not just be slapped on randomly. And this breaks it down perfectly. You know, a couple of well-placed stickers for performance parts that are actually on your car, that can add some real personality. But covering a whole fender in random, cheap eBay stickers, yeah, to people in the know, that just comes off as inauthentic and kind of silly. All right, let's wrap up with a couple more mods that are all about those finishing touches, the little details that really complete a car's look. First up, an honorable mention, debadging. This one's kind of funny because you're not adding anything at all. You're actually taking something away. The whole goal here is just to get a cleaner, sleeker, more minimalist appearance. But, and this is a big one, there is a huge difference between debadging and rebadging. Taking badges off for a clean look, totally fine. But putting fake ones on to pretend your car is a more powerful model, like a GT badge on a V6 Mustang, oh, that is a huge no-no. It's seen as being a total poser, and it goes against that core value of being proud of what you've actually got. And finally, let's talk about a small detail that can make a surprisingly big impact, painting your brake calipers. It's such a simple way to add a pop of color that you can see right through the wheels. Look, painting your calipers red isn't going to make you stop any faster. Let's be clear. This is pretty much all about the looks. But here's the cool part. This mod actually has a hidden practical benefit. If you use the right high-temperature paint, it can actually protect the metal calipers from rust and corrosion over time. So it's a little bit of style with a surprising side of substance. And that kind of brings us full circle, back to that first big question. After seeing the community, the creativity, and the personal joy behind these choices, you have to ask yourself, if a mod brings you happiness, if it lets you express yourself, and if it connects you to a whole community of passionate people, is it ever really pointless? Something to think about.